Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys. Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. Oh, I'm feeling a little fresh. I'm feeling a little fresh and sprite. Just got out of the shower. You can see my hair's still a little wet. And today's episode kind of brings me back to my childhood a little bit as well. So we'll just kind of dive into how I landed upon this episode. And then we'll just get into the thick of it. So, as you saw from the title, this sucker is called Bumper Rails. So, when I was a kid, first of all, I was talking with my nephew who I saw recently, and I was saying, "Hey, we should all get together and do something fun." And they have kids, and some of my nephews have kids, and I was like, "So, what's an age appropriate thing?" And we got to talking, and we started talking about bowling. Now, I come from like a bowling family. My mother bowled, my stepfather bowled, my aunts, like people bowled in my family. And if you're from the West Coast, you're used to like big ball bowling. But here on the East Coast, we do what's called candlepin bowling. So our pins are more like almost like straight, not those curvy. I'm doing the thing with my hands, the shape of my hands. It's not like Baba Papa shapes. You remember the Baba Papa cartoon? That's like West Coast bowling. East Coast bowling is more like straight up and down pins and small balls, right? So that's the kind of bowling that I grew up with. So we're like, oh, we should go bowling. And it got me to thinking about Sandy's Bowling Alley. Now, Sandy's Bowling Alley was the place where we bowled as kids. And it was in Salem. Although technically, I think it was in Wyndham on Route 28, but we all said it was in Salem for some reason. Some of you East Coast kids, some of you locals, some of you local massholes, you might remember Sandy's Bowling. But my mother was in a league there. My stepfather was in a league there. We were there. I spent so many hours of my childhood. And I remember all of a sudden at one point, like we all learned to bowl just by throwing the damn ball. But at some point, all of a sudden, bumper rails came onto the scene. And bumper rails were designed for, I think, several different reasons. Number one, mostly to just keep kids from crying. Because little kids like lose their shit when they can't successfully bowl. And a lot of kids, like, let's just call it what it is. They don't have the coordination yet to know how to like step, arm is swung back, throw the ball down, keep it on the lane, right? You would keep kids from getting like nonstop gutter balls. And kids in gutter balls, they would cry because they couldn't do it right and they couldn't do it well and blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden, some guy in Texas, I think was the one who created bumper rails. So I think he originally started using like cardboard tubes along so keep the balls out of the gutters for his own son or children. And then over time they became these inflatable things, and now they're like these mechanical, like boom, these bumper rails pop up. You can request them at the bowling alley. So, they also, besides helping kids to not cry, to have more fun bowling. One of the other things that they did is because sometimes a kid like didn't know their own strength. They didn't have quite, like I said, the coordination, the movement down. And a lot of times their balls would like bounce from one lane into somebody else's lane. And especially on league night, like they never let the kids bowl near the league. They put the kids on the, like, now they do like glow bowling and shit like that, like glow in the dark balls and all that fun stuff. And they just put them in a totally different section. But yeah, you wanted to keep your stuff in your lane and not have it go bumping out. Okay, so why do I want to talk about this today? My sweetie and I were having a conversation, and we were talking about somebody or a situation that we'd seen on TV or whatever it was, or online, and we were just saying like there were clearly no bumper rails in that situation, right? There were clearly no bumper rails to keep that shit from going wrong and bad and out of control. And I started to think about this. As adults, we do in our own way still have and need bumper rails. Now, when you were a little kid, The bumper rails of your life were really usually your parents. Your parents were the ones that kept you from running into the middle of the street or the road, from jumping off the building, from climbing the fence and doing like just doing shit that you shouldn't do, stuff that was going to get you hurt, in trouble, like arrested, maybe whatever, right? A lot of times, your parents were your first defense against you paying the consequences of being yourself. Your parents were the safeguard. They were the bumper rails between you and your own sometimes stupidity, right? So, now as adults, right? Our parents may not even be alive anymore. They may not be around anymore. So I started to think about this. And I started to think about my own life because that's the easiest thing usually for me to talk about, right? Is obviously my own experience and how I apply these kind of universal themes, these spiritual themes in a more personal and like down to earth way. So I kind of nailed it down to like 4 P's, the 4 P's of the bumper rails for us as adults and why they come in handy. Because there are going to be times, this is why we kind of need bumper rails. There are going to be times when we kind of, I always say it's very helpful to just accept the fact that in some way we're all a little insane, right? To just accept the fact that we're all a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. We're all a little crazy, okay? The ego mind is not to be trusted. The ego mind is fickle as fuck. It is not to be trusted. As we say in A Course in Miracles, the ego speaks first and it speaks loudest. And I always add, and it's always wrong, right? The ego mind is all into you being separate and special. And it will make you special through arrogance, through superiority, or it will make you special through awfulness and shittiness, and you don't know how bad I have it, blah, 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 right? So, how do we keep ourselves from going off the rails and doing things that are not reflective of who we really are or who we really want to be in the world, right? The choices we make, how we're showing up, the relationships, how we spend our money, spend our time, who we spend time with, all these things, right? So it's like, how do we keep ourselves from doing things that are like illegal, just not good choices, not healthy choices, not hanging out with particular people who maybe are not going to be good for us, our well-being, our mental health, whatever. How do we keep ourselves from doing, I would say, stupid stuff, illegal stuff, stuff that's going to get you killed, hurt, put in jail, or in a big pile of regret, shame, and guilt? And what are some of the things that we can put in place as adults, our own bumper rails? So where before you mostly had your parents as children, and maybe once in a while you had a sibling that looked out for you, but a lot of times they kind of wanted you to get into trouble. So not always super reliable. Sometimes you had your friends looking out for you. And in some cases, right, maybe you had a really good school teacher or a coach or like a baseball coach or somebody who kept an eye on you, right? But once we grow up, we now become responsible for our own thoughts, words, actions, and behaviors, our own choices. And left to our own devices, again, because the ego mind is a little insane, we won't always get it right. That's par for the course. But where can we, like, meaning accidents are going to happen, right? We're clumsy. We're just by the fact that we are in these human bodies having this experience here in the world, we're going to screw some things out. We're going to make mistakes. And thank God we have the means to forgive and to apologize, right? Make amends, because that's really important. But when we're really trying to get somewhere in life, when we're really trying to either transform something about ourselves, whether it's like letting go of an old habit or addiction or way of being or way of thinking or whatever, it's wicked helpful to have tools, what I would call like these tools, these 4 P's in place. So we're just going to break them down kind of like one by one. And these are the things that I think about. So instead of like keeping you from going off the rails, right? Kind of like in bowling, I'm kind of like, what are the things that we have in place or can have in place to keep us on the path, to keep us on the path that we have set out for ourselves. And whether that is a path that is like there's a goal, right, that you're trying to reach, or whether there's some old story that you're trying to let go of. Maybe it's some sort of a healing, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is. There's a path that we find ourselves on. So, what are these four things that the four P's that keep us on the path? Number one is people. Instead of your parents now maybe your parents are still alive and they do still influence you, right? I've known many adults who have said to me, oh my God, my father would kill me if I did that. Oh, my mother would be so disappointed if I do this, right? I think at some point as an adult, you have to start living for yourself. You have to make choices that resonate for you, and you have to leave some of the the origin family kind of contracts that you kind of have to sign when you're a child, right? In this house, we do this. In our house, we don't talk about that. Here, this is how it is. As long as you're under my roof, this is how it's going to be, right? Well, once you're out into the world and you're making your own choices, right? Your parents may not be as strong of an influence in your life if they ever even were to begin with. A lot of times, sometimes, right? A lot of times, sometimes, parents are actually poster children for how we never want to do it, for how we never want to do it. I call that accidental teachers, right? They taught us how we never, ever want to be in some ways. Okay, not throwing out. You can't throw out. Look, I always say if you're gonna blame your caretakers, your earliest caretakers, your caregivers, your parents, your people, right, your guardians for everything that's gone wrong. A lot of times the thing that went wrong also made us who we are. So we got to give some credit where it's due. That's that's a whole of the whole of the episode for another day. Okay, number one, people. So who are the people that you're surrounding yourself with, like in the physical world? Who are the people you spend the most time with? Because these people are either going to help you get where you want to go, or they're going to distract you. They're going to detain you. They're going to screw things up for you. They are not going to be setting good examples. They are not going to have the discipline, maybe for the goals that you have and stuff like that. We've heard 1,000 times that you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. I don't know how much I believe like that in its entirety. I definitely think the people we are surrounded by can be influential, but I do think that sometimes we outgrow certain behaviors of certain people and we can still love them, but maybe we just don't spend as much time with them. Maybe we spend some time with them. So I think, in this day and age of the internet, it's really easy to try to do these quippy little sayings, but there's so much nuance in human relationships, right? So yeah, but we are influenced a lot, certainly growing up, because we are so suggestible and highly hypnotizable and influenceable, right? We are so easily imprinted upon to make an impression on us as little kids, especially between, literally the 3rd trimester in the womb till about 8 years old, all that stuff is kind of from our parents and our environment and the experiences and the events, and all that stuff is getting imprinted on us. But so still as adults, the people that you have in place around you, your sweetie, your siblings, your family, your best friends, your coworkers, whatever, these people, and I'm talking like maybe a handful of people, are people who you really want to know you. Really want to know your goals, really want to know what your dreams are, the direction you're heading in, and the path that you're on. Because when you start to slip and get off the path, and whether this is a mentor, whether this is a community of some sort, whether it's a coach or somebody that you're not paying, it could be, like I said, family or friends, you want somebody or a group of somebodies to say, hey, I noticed this. I'm not judging you. Out of curiosity, though, I'm curious, like, what's going on with this? Because it seems to me that you said you wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and yet you're making some choices that maybe aren't going to be in alignment with what you said. Like I always say, the assignment is alignment, right? Some of these choices don't seem to be in alignment with what you told us you wanted to accomplish. So having people there, not as gatekeepers, not as babysitters, not to like wag their finger in your face, but as gentle reminders like, hey, you said this thing was important to you. And I'm just wondering like, what's going on with you? Have you turned a corner? Have you decided to drop this goal? Are you no longer in pursuit of? Are you just gonna take a break? Like, what's shaken? Because the voice in our head can be so loud and so critical and so deceiving, that ego mind, right? It is not our friend. And it can really get in the way and it can take us out at the knees and it can sidetrack us. So, number one, right? Your bumper rails as adults. Number one is people. Who do you have in place around you to support you, to guide you, and mostly just to remind you of your own heart's desires, dreams, wishes, plans, goals? Okay. Number two, having some practices in place. Now, people who come to work with me, we always talk about having a DSP, a daily spiritual practice. Because one of the things that I know, and it says it in A Course in Miracles, and it is said in other ways in other traditions, is that, an undisciplined mind can accomplish nothing. An untrained mind can accomplish nothing. One of the great things about having a daily spiritual practice, especially if it includes meditation, contemplation, prayer, these things that you do on a daily basis. Meditation specifically can really help not only to quiet the mind, right? But it doesn't always quiet the mind. Sometimes there's a lot of chatter, but sometimes you might need to bring your mind back to the present moment 1,000 times. But that right there is the training of the mind, to be able to place your mind where you want to place it when you want to place it there, so that you are not just being bullied by your own brain, by your own voice in your own head, that you have some authority, some agency, some authorship, right? Some autonomy away from the chatter of your mind, and being able to have a daily DSP, to have a daily spiritual practice, right? And for some people, it's doing their rosary beads. For some people, it's doing like a mantra on a mala bead. For some people, it's passage meditation, right? It is the repetition of a passage in your mind, or repetition of a mantra or whatever. But being able to have practices in place. For some people, it might be breathing practices, a yoga practice. It might be that you run or that you strength train. That's your practice. You go out into nature and you commune with nature. That could be your practice. For some people, I know some people who swim, and for them, swimming like gets them in the water. It puts them into this buoyant state. And then it's breathing and movement. It's meditation and motion, right? So having practices that keep you from going off the rails, that kind of keep you on this path, so that you are able to, put your mind where you want to put it, and to be guided, and to be able to slow down enough that you can hear the wisdom from your own internal teacher, your own internal voice, your own divine intelligence, whether you call that spirit, Holy Spirit, intuition, inner teacher, gut instinct, whatever it is, that you have some practices in place that consistently put you in touch with yourself, with source, and with spirit. I have found this to be highly, not only invaluable, but incredibly practical. People think of spirituality sometimes, or spiritual practices, as being like, I don't want to say woo woo. That's more like the more esoteric, like the tarot cards and the, the divination tools, and why can't I think of the word incense, and like all the enneagrams and the human design, like all those things, all those systems, right? And there's nothing wrong with those. I'm just saying, right? I'm talking like things that you actually are using on a daily basis to remind you of who you truly are, to remind you of the path that you are choosing to walk on, and to be able to, and I don't mean control your mind. It sounds so like rigid, but to be able to place your mind at will where you want to, so that you are not thrown about like when the ego mind gets crazy. So just double amen hands if you're a person who has anxiety. Double amen hands if you're a person who has some sort of depressive depression, panic attacks, when you feel like, what are they called? Not ruminating thoughts, but like obsessive thoughts, when you can't stop thinking about something. That is a mind that is now like, is puppeteering you. And we want to be able to bring ourselves back to the present moment and to make conscious choices. So we are not being ping-ponged around by the external world and by chatter in our mind that is not helpful. I mean, I could just keep talking about that, but let's stop there for number two. So we have people is the first P, right? And practices. Things like I said, daily spiritual practices of some kind. For some people, it's like writing and journaling. For some people, it's like making art. For some people, it's dance. Like whatever I always say, like, it's not for me to tell you how you are supposed to commune with the divine, but I am always really interested in helping people creating personal practices that support them on their spiritual path. Okay. Number three, P, the number three P is principles. So you can think of your principles as kind of like these core values, how you identify, like who you are. And an example of that is you might have these things where you say, I'm the kind of person who, or I want to be the kind of person who. So that when your actions or your thoughts are starting to get a little wonky, a little wacky, a little like out of alignment, when you're starting to maybe make some choices that are raising some eyebrows or like getting some side eye, right? I'm making little side eyes and waggling my eyebrows, right? When people are like, what's up with that? Or you might even be feeling that, like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, why am I doing that? If we can have some principles in place that say, like, this is a line that I never cross. This is not something I would do. I'm not going to steal from, I'm making these up, right? I would never steal. I'm not somebody who's going to lie on behalf of whatever. I'm going to do my best to always tell the truth. I'm not going to like cheat on a test, blah, 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 blah. We get some principles in place when we get a little tempted, because you will be tempted by this world to abandon your values, to abandon your morals and your ethics. I mean, hey, take a look around at the world right now. There's a lot of moral bending. There's a lot of bullshit that's happening out there under the guise of like, quote unquote, religious what? Don't get me started. And we're back. Don't get me started. But we want to have some personal principles in place so that when we find ourselves starting to go a little bit out of the lane, a little bit off the rails, we can look back on that and say, that's right. This is important to me. I have a code. Note to self. I got to do that episode about codes, right? You got to have a code. And your principles, self-principling, because there won't always be your people around. There are going to be moments when you feel tempted. Let me give an example. I remember speaking to a friend one time, and I would love to hear from people about this, but I remember speaking to an old male friend of mine one time. And he is convinced that all men will cheat on their partners, male or female. If you were to say to a man, right, you will not get caught. Like if you could somehow give them a guarantee, right? In this magical like story that he is telling me, imagine a world where you could cheat on your partner and never get caught. He said to me, every single man would do it. And I looked him in the face and I said, I don't believe that. I don't think they would. I said, I think there's a lot of men out there that have certain principles that they would never do that. They wouldn't do that to their wives. They wouldn't do that to their family. I'm not judging. P.S. I'm not judging anybody if you have or haven't or whatever. I'm just saying, I don't buy into this whole all men think with their dicks and all men can't like help themselves. I know some highly principled people. And I said to him, I don't think that's true. And he just laughed and shook his head like poor me, because I'm such a sucker that I believed in the goodness of people, right? The goodness of some men somewhere. Oh my God. But maybe I am a sucker, but I do choose to believe that there are still some really principled people out there, right? So having principles, keep us on track, right? Keep us on that path. And then here's this, protocols in place. For when maybe you slip, for when maybe you lose your way, you slip off the path, you lose track, you get diverted in the woods and you take a path less traveled, right? Or maybe a path you shouldn't be on, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, we got to have some protocols in place. It's like, okay, I left the path. Now what? Now what do I do? And it doesn't help us to just kind of stay in the shitty diaper in the victim loop feeling sorry. It's like, no, if there's somebody to make amends to, own your shit, own up to it. I slipped. I screwed up. I made a mistake. I did X, Y, and Z. I lost my way. I forgot to check in with my people. I let my practices slide. I haven't been doing my DSP lately, right? I didn't check in with my principals because I didn't want to think about them because I just wanted to do the thing that I wanted to do, even though I knew it wouldn't end well, right? When that kind of stuff goes down, we want to have some protocols in place. Step 1, this is what I'm going to do. Step 2, then I need to make amends. Step 3, and sometimes who you need to apologize to is yourself. Because you might not always be hurting another person, but sometimes the things that you choose to do, you only end up hurting yourself because you lose self-respect, you lose your self-integrity, right? And then you start to get yourself into shame and blame and guilt and all these regrets and things that are not very helpful. So having protocols in place of this is how I get myself back on track. You know, and in AA and in different things, that's why they give like chips, right? They give those chips, like your 24-hour chip, and then you get like your day chip and a week, and it goes on, right? Your month and your years and whatever. Because when you slip, one of the protocols is now you start all over again. You go back and you start and you get your next chip, right? You get a 24-hour chip, right? So there's things in place that help you to stay on the path. And here's the thing, if you slip on the path, it is not going to feel good. When those bumper rails are not in place and we go outside, when we go rolling into somebody else's lane, or we are in the gutter, making choices that keep us in the gutter, it is not going to feel good. It is not going to feel good. Even Gandhi talked about this, Mahatma Gandhi, and I love this. It's called the path. I call this the path, right? And this is what Mahatma Gandhi said. He says, I know the path. It is straight and narrow. It is like the edge of a sword. I rejoice to walk on it. I weep when I slip. God's word is, he who strives never perishes. And I have implicit faith in that promise. Though therefore from my weakness I fail 1,000 times, I shall not lose faith. I shall not lose faith. Because here's the thing, you guys, you slip off the path, right? You get yourself back up. You get back to the business of love. You get back to the business of being, right, a person of their word, of like, relearning to trust yourself again. Keep your word to yourself, keep your word to other people, etc. Right? He who strives never perishes. So we don't just throw our hands up and say, oh, I blew it, too bad, da 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 da. No, you go back to those P's. You go back to your people. Maybe you get a sponsor. You go back to your people. Maybe you join a group like the Nest, right? My group mentoring program, right? A spiritual community like you find, like I said, in the Nest. Right? If you want to join or check it out, just go to, karenkenney.com/nest, N-E-S-T. Maybe you go back to your yoga studio or your church group or your, whatever it is, you get in touch with your family or an old mentor, or you hire a coach, or you hire a spiritual mentor, like I work with people, etc., right? You get back to your people. You get back to your practices, because one of the things that I find, especially with clients and people in the Nest and people I've worked with over the years, almost always when somebody says to me, I've been having a hard time lately, I will say to them, how's your DSP going? And they'll inevitably say to me, I haven't really been doing it lately. And it's like, exactly. So the practice is the DSP keeps us locked in, keeps us on track. Okay. And then you have those principles, who you are, what you stand on, what's your code, what you really believe. Those principles will keep you from making suspicious decision, right? Choices where it's like, that sounds a little too good to be true. That sounds a little crooked. That sounds a little off, right? Do your homework, make sure, right? Check in with your principles. Am I the kind of person who would do this, buy this, say this, all that stuff. Support this, vote this way, whatever. And then have those protocols in place, because it is inevitable, man, that we are going to slip, that we are going to make mistakes. And I'm not saying slipping like with sobriety, but just we're clumsy. We're going to say a thing, do a thing, and then afterwards go, I should have thought about that longer. I should have been a little more patient. I maybe shouldn't have said yes, whatever it is. And it's just the nature of being human. And this is why forgiveness is such a powerful practice, and having grace and mercy and compassion for ourselves and others when we do slip up. So this is the question I want to leave you with. What do you have in place currently to keep you on the path? Just pause, take a big breath in, exhale it out twice as long. And think on this. What are the people you have in place? What are the practices, the principles, and the protocols? What do you have in place to keep you on your path? And if there's some place where there's some gaps or some holes and you want to work on that stuff, you know where to find me, right? Just go to KarenKenney.com. But it's important that you take time, I think, to answer this. Because it's so easy to go on autopilot with your life, to just go through the motions, to just get through the day, to just survive the day. And we stop living intentionally. We stop living with intention and attention. And we kind of just start to become little robots going through the motions, right? And I get it. I get it. Being alive on this planet, being human is wicked hard, man. It's wicked hard. And it's especially hard right now. I mean, it has been hard. When I look back, I mean, I haven't been alive through all of the awful things that have happened in this country and in this world. But when I look back and I think we often say there's that phrase, right? We need love now more than ever. I'm like, I don't know. I can think back to 1940s when we really needed love, and the 50s and the 60s when I just think we need love all the time in the most capacity possible. And maybe the world would look a little different. And that's what I think about these 4 Ps, right? The people, the practices, the principles, and the protocols. These are ways of loving. These are ways of loving ourselves and keeping us on the path of love. So I think that's what I got. I'll probably think of something in 20 minutes and wish I had said it. But for now, that's what I've got. I hope it's helpful in some way and beneficial. And if you feel like it has been for you, maybe it will be for somebody else that you love. So share it. Spread the link. I don't know. Tell somebody about it. I always appreciate it when people let me know and reach out and say, oh, I sent this to my cousin, or I sent this to my auntie, or I sent this to my friend. So just thank you. And thank you to everybody who is a loyal listener. New listeners, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. As I always say, you can find all things on KarenKenney.com. If you want to get this podcast directly into your email inbox every Thursday morning, bright and early, just go to KarenKenney.com/sign up. It's wicked easy. And that's it. Okay. Wherever you go, you guys, may you leave the animals, the people, the planet, the environment, and yourself better than how you first found it. Wherever you go, may you and your energy and your presence and your love and your bumper rails be a blessing. Bye.